numbers 21 and 25. This covers content that shows up on 22, 23, and 24. And this also covers content that shows up on 26. So please look up. While your 10.3 is being stamped by Samuel Gary, please make sure you have both sides of this whiteboard.
So it's
10.5, whatever your name is. Yeah.
I wonder why the clam is so loose.
All we have to do is show them that we can trees on it. Like, no, we only have to show them that the trees on it. I know somebody. So we have to show them that trees on it.
Alright, there it is. It could be different, you know.
You could try to set something up later. I'm just busy. It's not that I wouldn't take it. So that we can keep trying whenever people need words. Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to take it later. It's just I was like, pretty much in the next 3 weeks, I expect to have I don't know how to help you.
Oh, wait, subsurface insurance? What's low ground?
No, the different impact.
I also have a bunch of stuff. Whatever, you can work it out. I just don't know.
Well,
Maybe, but I don't really like doing it. If you have it here, I can try it. Just keep it all ready in the drawer.
That's all of that. That's all we have to do.
Yeah.
You're here during lunch, right?
What?
You're here during lunch.
Today, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, students, while you are copying the stuff on the board, and we're going to write things about each of those, so you really have to make sure that you have them down on paper. While you are copying down what's on the board, I'd like to make a few announcements, please. While you're copying that down, remember that we have an after-school environmental film tonight. It's called No Impact Man at 6 p.m. It's about a dude that tries not to make any trash or to have no impact. And it's really pretty hilarious and kind of cute. There's a lot of comedy. It's an interesting movie. Tonight at 6 p.m.
Is that showing tomorrow night too?
We don't have a parent for tomorrow night, so at this time we're not showing it tomorrow.
What if my mom can come?
Then talk to Ava Dore and we'll see about tomorrow. Also want to remind everybody that your post lab is due tomorrow. And that the resubmission deadline is today at lunch. Yeah, but there's already like 20 groups that are planning to come, so if I were you, I'd come at the beginning and plan to wait. I'm not going to take them at the last couple minutes. When I start period 5, I start period 5. Separately, if your group's not ready to go today, I just want to be really clear about what the problem is. I am willing to accept your stuff later. I am not very much available later. I'm having minor surgery on Friday. I got bed rest through the weekend. I'm super impacted getting into AP tests. We have the review process, all this paperwork stuff. I've got the aquaponics thing picking up a bunch of steam and my building project, and I gotta help Nat finish up the year, and I'm not complaining, I'm just saying we're getting into the busiest part of the year for me. The day after graduation, I leave Santa Barbara. So for me, I'm on this total countdown where I've gotta do legal stuff, house stuff, business stuff, and I want to remain available to my students for the school stuff. So your houses after today at lunch become kind of sort of back burner. If you can work out a time to meet with me, I'll accept it, but the timing will be the challenge. Yeah.
The post lab for the project, is that how soon is that going to start?
We start testing the houses Monday next week. Or probably Tuesday next week, to be honest. Okay.
Jose,
Yeah.
could you remove your chair? I can't see the rest of 25.
Yesterday, did we talk about smelting, heap leach extraction, and mercury amalgamation?
Yes.
All three?
Yes.
So there's just, I can give you 1.5 minutes to finish copying 21 and 25. All right. So the only thing we have to finish on assignment 10.1 is number 16, which is also today's warm-up. My question is, what's the impact difference between surface and subsurface mines? Please look up. Subsurface, I mean like a hole in the ground, underground mining, a tunnel in the ground. Surface, I mean like open pit, strip, or mountaintop removal. And I'm sure everybody understands the scale, right? Please look up. If you have a teeny little hole in the surface to access a tunnel, you'll bring out a lot less trash and a lot less access for water pollution, because there's less surface water pollution on your tailings and less water to impound on the surface. Subsurface has less spoils, less impoundment, and obviously less habitat impact. James Mel, you can put it on top of the house, no problem. I know it's distracting. It's hard for me too, bro. I was just using my, you just can't stop me. I'm getting paid. And then, surface mines, more spoils, tailings, more impoundment, more habitat impact. In other words, if you could please look up, big footprint, little footprint. But profitability is the opposite. Yeah?
Aren't subsurface the ones where you have to go underground with those things, with like the huge
tunnels and
things
stuff?
that are really unsafe, so they don't really do those anymore?
Right.
So are most of them surface ones?
Right. So the unfortunate flip side is the safest and most profitable are also the biggest ecological harm. Obviously, if you're into labor, you want safety. If you're into business, you want profit, which is the opposite of the environmental benefits.
Wait, sorry, the surface or the subsurface is profitable, more profitable?
Surface is more profitable.
But, okay, so it is more profitable with smaller surface? Okay.
Right, smaller footprint.
Surfaces bigger.
Oh. Ask your question again, I'll get it right, I promise.
Wait, so surface is big footprint, big environmental? I mean, big footprint, big profit?
That's right. It's worse for the environment, but more profitable, and by the way, safer.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me clear that up. I'm sorry I fumbled it. 17 and 18, I thought that your book did very well clearly answering them. If I was you, I wouldn't skip them. I understand how it goes. A lot of you just do the first couple study goals and then you fake it. That's a mistake. So I'm just trying to be nice and reminding you that you blew it if you did that, because I'm not going over 17 and 18, but you will need them. I said it clearly, right? You'll need those. I want to move on to assignment 10.3, vocab questions first. Yeah.
The first one, NIMBY.
NIMBY. Not in my backyard. There's things that everybody wants, but nobody wants near them. Like we all want hazardous waste material treatment, but we don't want them to do that in my neighborhood. Better put that where other people live. And obviously everybody says that. So, especially for waste management, like we want waste to be managed directly, but nobody wants waste management near them, so we end up doing it where nobody can see what's going on. Next vocab. Yeah. The very thin layer on water or soil that's ecologically active. Yeah.
Only a couple millimeters.
Yeah, in the ocean, it's like less than half an inch. Almost all photosynthesis in the world occurs in the top half inch of the ocean. Almost all of it. Next. Yeah.
Night soil.
Soil made out of sludge, sewage sludge. It's like composted poo solids. And remember, it's not actually poo solids, but like solids in wastewater. If you did your homework last night, you noticed I put an article in there about how we don't use night soil anymore. Too many pharmaceuticals and heavy metals from seafood. I heard that when I went on a tour of the wastewater facility. Then this year, the dude at the wastewater facility told me that we do use night soil in Santa Barbara. That surprised me a little bit. Next. All right. I want to do most of assignment 10.3 today. And I'm sorry, but there's a few vocabulary interruptions that may seem non-sequential. First, I want to talk about e-waste. I'm guessing at least some of you are kind of tech savvy. So at least some of you have experience with technology. So some of you may have noticed that a lot of electronics have like a little plastic tag that says no trash bin or like no throwing into receptacle. And maybe if you've never seen those tags, you at least know that you're not supposed to throw electronic materials in the trash. Technically, anything which has wires inside or out. And that's because a lot of metals are really dangerous when they meet with water. Many of our electronics have metals that you don't want to put into the ground, because once they contact groundwater, those metals cause a variety of different hazardous pollution. How many of you have been to an electronic waste processing place or like an e-waste collection event, or dropped off e-waste at like the showgrounds or at a high school, or like the things where you get rid of... And how many of you know that your household disposes of e-waste in such a manner you just didn't do it yourself? Where does that go? Like, my iPhone, what, anybody know what the, like what does the last model iPhone usually go for? $300, $400? 500? This was an older model, so when I bought it, it was when they released the 6, I bought the 5. Yeah, I think it was either 2 or 3. I want to say 300 for the sake of conversation. That's pretty close to what it costs to make it. Apple doesn't make a ton of money on selling the phone. They usually make a ton of money on selling the newest ones. which have like an upsell because they look special. But the price that they sell them at the end of the production line, that's usually the straight up, like, they're selling it for what it costs them. And so if I paid $300 for this, it's safe to assume it cost Apple about $300 to get it to me. And of that $300, you know, like packaging, shipping, and labor is probably more than half. So the materials are probably somewhere between $100 and $150. Holy mackerel, that's $100 or $150 worth of stuff. If I could just disassemble this, even when it wears out, 95% of the parts are still going to be fine, right? Like maybe the glass will get scratched, or maybe the battery will wear out. Maybe the button will stop reading my fingerprint, which it already has. By the way, how many of you have to reset your fingerprint? My finger? I can clean my finger?
No, just add a bunch of the same finger.
Yeah,
Add a bunch of different ones. of the
Yeah,
same
I've got 4 of the same finger.
just don't buy that.
Try again.
Maybe you can get a finger.
I get like really brutal callousing.
Yeah, it's a problem with rock climbers because we get like our fingers change.
It's fine.
So sometimes they can sell them for less because there's marketing involved. They plan to make money off you elsewhere. So they lose money on the phone, but then they're going to buy a bunch of apps or use a bunch of data or whatever. They'll get their money back. Don't worry. What I'm talking about is the material in that phone. If it's like $100 worth of stuff, when people recycle it, they should be able to make money, right? Because they take it apart and get $100 worth of stuff out. Here's the problem. What you imagine is happening with e-waste is not happening with e-waste most of the time. You know that working with electronics is hazardous to your health. So you would imagine in a controlled environment with ventilation and good lighting, technicians who know what they're doing do the most to get all the parts out of that phone. But remember, that was about $200 of packaging, shipping, transportation, and labor for $100 worth of stuff. So even if you could disassemble this perfectly, it would cost you at least that same $100 in labor to get $100 worth of used stuff. Anybody good at math? Is that worth it? Like you don't need to spend $100 in labor to get less than $100 worth of material out of it. And so what are they going to do with it? How much do they get out of it? What happens here? Interesting fact is most of the time, these are not demanufactured in a controlled environment. Most electronic waste. By the way, the places that do buy, in particular, a couple models of iPhone in particular, usually they sell the glass or the case. There's like a few parts that they salvage out of it, but just a few. Most e-waste recycling today, and by the way, there's a lot. We have a lot of computers, and we have a lot of cell phones. A couple of years ago, Japan reached the impossible and logical number of more than 2 cell phones per human.
Wait, that's just kind of everyone in Japan?
I believe it's just for adults, but I wouldn't be surprised if that threshold went down to young teenagers as well. Yeah.
Is that like 2 using phones that are like active or just like one?
Yeah.
So that's the question, right? Is it a bro phone and a ho phone? Like 2 separate numbers? And I think not. My interpretation is that most phones around the world have the SIM card interchangeability. So I'm guessing they have 2 viable phones with 1 line that switches between the phones.
Got like 2 working phones. It's not like there's like an old one.
Right, 2 working phones and 1 number. Speaking of working phones, Baylor, snowball your cell phone over to the house by Jay Trander. Now we would think that this is worth money. People are going to demanufacture to get all those little parts out.
We're right.
But instead, there's this like international trade in cell phones. Sorry, in e-waste. Most electronics are not recycled in the United States. They're not subjected to environmental and labor oversight. Most of it is traded internationally. Every couple of years, the location changes because the environmental harm makes people embarrassed. So it used to go to China, and then China got embarrassed, and then it started going to India, and then India got embarrassed, so it started going to Bangladesh, and Bangladesh got embarrassed, so it started going to Pakistan, and Pakistan got embarrassed. Then it moved to Nigeria, but I'm sure by now Nigeria has moved on. Stuff shows up on a container, and it basically down values as a resource. So, oh, is that a new TV? Cool, man, I'll give you $2 for it. I take that home, smash the glass, take out the magnet. Now, like, yo, you want the rest of my TV for $1? Because I got the magnet out. She goes, $1? Yeah, all right. And so she takes that thing out, picks it apart, takes out all the transistors, she melts them for scrap lead. She got 25 cents. She can sell that for at least 75 cents and break even. She goes, you give me 80 cents for it. I made a nickel. So homegirl pays 80 cents. She takes out all the wire, melts down the copper. She got 20 cents of copper wire. She paid 80 cents for it. She goes, all right, so 70 cents. And somebody melts out the plastic to make cheap toys. And eventually the stuff ends up in the landfill. Remember, this was too dirty for us to do in our landfills. But we can't regulate what happens internationally. So we don't know if that kid has safety training. We can be pretty sure that this kid's not working in a place with like controlled air quality. And I'm pretty confident that these kids would be pretty stoked to have your problems, to put it mildly. What we want to happen with e-waste so far in the US doesn't happen much. A lot of the stuff is handled by very, very poor people who get very, very low value resources. Basically, it's picking through landfills of e-waste to melt all the cables to get the copper plug or melt all the thingamabobber to get something out. A lot of times this is done in open fires, like you see Homeboy using his home walk. In many cases, this is a job for people that have like less value, quote unquote, in the society. So people who are disabled and can't do other jobs, they'll be like, yo, here's all the trash, give me the metal out and I'll give you a nickel or whatever. There is a trend developing now where we can do what's called green certification of e-waste processing. So like people will tell you, yeah, that's labor law compliant or environmental compliant. And that is cheaper to do in other countries, but that's not very common. I don't know about you, but it makes me feel really bad because I have so much e-waste. I consume electronics like crazy. In the 12 years I've been a high school teacher, I've probably been through like 7 or 8 phones. I'm on my 4th iPad. I've been through like a couple laptops, a couple desktops, plus my work computers. I don't know how many chargers I've gone through. And I'm just getting started. Like, I got at least 20, 30 years left to live. It's kind of amazing to think about, right? Like, how many cell phones are you going to go through in your life? It's a lot of material we're talking about. Okay. I hope that in about a decade, I won't be teaching this lecture anymore. My hunch is, nationwide, we are shifting to certified e-waste recycling. I hope we are. Number 20. Back in the day, it was really hard to make stuff. So we didn't make a lot of trash. Because we didn't make a lot of trash, waste disposal was just like, put it someplace far away, and let the animals pick through it, and the wind and the tide will carry it away from you. The quote is, dilute and disperse. Get it away from you and let it spread out. More recently, we started living in cities. It's cheaper and cheaper to make stuff, so more of us have more and more stuff, so we're making more and more trash. Now we concentrate and contain, put everything in piles, landfills. Cities have another interesting problem, by the way. What happens when dirt gets nasty and you don't know whose fault that was? Vocab terms are called brown fields. Vocab number 20. Land that was previously used for industrial purposes that has become contaminated. You know, Austin has a paint factory. He dies in his car accident, and his poor widow Sarah tries to keep the plant going for a while. But eventually she hands it to her niece Hope, who shutters it, puts up a fence. As all the stuff is rotting, she eventually donates it to some land magnate, Marlin, who's got all this land to keep track of, and he knows the best thing we can do is just reduce liability. He bulldozes the whole place. Everything goes out to the landfill. Eventually, he donates it to the city, so city land manager Ryan is like, okay, what are we going to do with this nice piece of land? She goes around to look at it. It looks empty. She donates it to Maria's school, which builds a preschool, and it turns out that the kids are all playing in dirt that's got contamination from whatever the hell was going on when Austin owned it. It's been private. It's been public. It's been donated. It's old. It's difficult to monitor. These are called brown fields. Land that is contaminated by previous industrial usage. Yeah?
When you buy the land, do they have to tell you if it was like used for industrial purposes?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So you can only be responsible for so much information. There's like this good faith law in real estate where like if you know something about it, you gotta tell me. On the other hand, you're not responsible to know stuff that you couldn't be expected to know. So a lot of times you can find land that goes back to like in Santa Barbara that goes back to like the Spanish land deeds. Like some land has maintained spectacular records going really far back. But every time there's a fire in between and the municipal records burn down, every time there's like a shady custody battle / parents bickering, sibling rivalry, mysterious, a couple lies and cheats, a couple generations back, it's easy to not know what happened to stuff. Okay, so anyway, dilute and disperse, then concentrate and contain. And nowadays we're looking around and we realize, wait a minute, we don't have enough space to put all of our trash, and we don't have enough stuff to make all the things our economy needs, because please look up, one-way material management is dumb. Think about how our economy works. We spend money to take stuff out of the ground. We spend money to make that useful. We spend money to package that in consumer products. We spend money to deliver that to the consumer. The consumer spends money to get it. And when the consumer is done, we put it back in the ground and make sure nobody can ever use that again. Everybody understands we're going to end up with all of the goods underground in an unusable form, and nothing left in the ground that we can extract to make more stuff. It's not sustainable to make everything into garbage. So, your generation is living in the era of quote-unquote zero waste. The idea that once something comes into play in our economy, we will keep it in play. Make something remain useful. which brings us to number 21. Integrated waste management. Using as many methods as possible to get as close as we can to zero waste. The idea is this, please look up. Take the waste stream, and I know my drawing is kind of crappy, but I hope you can see. We want to shrink what ends up in the landfill. As little stuff going one way as possible. Keeping in play as much as we can. I'll break this down for you. I'll talk about each of the words. You need a lot more notes than I put up here. Please look up. This all starts at home by avoiding making trash. Each of us in our personal lives do the first step, making less trash. One obvious thing is, of course, reusing stuff, like me with my empty bottles. But probably the single most important thing any of us can do to save the environment. And remember, all year long I said the single most important thing you can do to avoid climate change is change your diet. But the single most important thing you can do to avoid wasting water is to kill your lawn. Well, the single most important thing that you can do to save the environment as a general whole, one thing everybody can do, reduce the stuff you have. Less stuff. All of the consequences in the material pathway disappear if it's not your stuff. I know that's a grossly un-American suggestion, but less stuff. I mean, have you ever been to like another part of the world and people have like the one pair of shorts and the one t-shirt? Anybody ever notice like how hard it is to actually wear out a t-shirt? Like where it stops working as a t-shirt? Like how does it have to be where it doesn't keep the sun off your shoulders? I had a t-shirt that went threadbare. I just threw away a t-shirt because it was literally like the holes were starting to connect. I got that t-shirt 1998. I probably wore it like every week or two since then. I really liked it. It was a cool shirt. We trip to Argentina. It said, "Let's save the whales." It was really neat. But it said in Spanish. And I was psyched. I wore that thing out. I felt kind of proud of myself. Like, wow, that's one piece of trash that I've actually earned. On the other hand, in those intervening 17 years, I've probably thrown away 50 t-shirts that I never wore once. Like, oh, thanks, but I don't need that. Or I'm not going to wear that. It doesn't fit right. It pinches my armpits.
Pinches your armpit?
I get fat armpits. The shirts don't fit right. Terrific. Reducing is probably the best thing you can do to make less trash, but we move on. Then there's the stuff that the system can do to support you. This is like your city, your county, your state. Recycling, organic waste and compost, hazmat and e-waste handling, or disassembly and remanufacture, like junkyards or things you can send back and they'll be made again. Like, I don't know if you've heard, but Patagonia takes back fleece and grinds it up to make more fleece. By the way, that may be a waste of carbon, but the thought is a good one. Remanufacture, that's a nice concept. It might not actually be a good idea in the math, but everybody knows that recycling is actually a really good call. Contrary to what you may have heard, You save water, you save trees, you save energy, which is CO2. Remember that using less energy makes less carbon, makes less global warming, and of course making less trash is less energy spent to make less landfill. Santa Barbara takes a lot of your organic waste and makes it into mulch, which also saves us water because less stuff evaporates around your landscaping. Double bonus. Santa Barbara also has started a commercial composting program. You might have seen the yellow containers in front of some restaurants and cafeterias and stuff. Anybody seen the yellow containers? Compost? And of course, we in Santa Barbara, we've got a number of hazmat and e-waste things. Some of those are probably really righteous. Some of those, who knows, maybe they're just shipping it out to Nigeria. Finally, there's stuff that your waste system can do. Key term for you, recovery. That means get it out of trash. Like, you can reclaim water. You know that Santa Barbara has a lot of irrigation from wastewater because they take that wastewater and they put it back in the system. That's reclaiming, that's recovering the water. In Los Angeles, a lot of the landfills, they make methane mines out of the landfills. So the anaerobic decomposition is making methane. They use that for electricity. Something like 8% of downtown Los Angeles is powered by methane from landfills. And of course, you already have heard that you can incinerate some of the trash. Light it on fire, boil water, make electricity. Why not? Of course, you can also recycle some of the nutrients. You can take out stuff that's usable, you know, like in wastewater. We have fertilizer spraying on the lawn because there's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in the waste stream. Finally, we've got a little bit that we still have to get rid of. That's what landfills are for. I'll come back to the landfill in a moment. I got to skip around, but look, socially, here's a couple of good ideas. And by the way, I'm not sure how many times you get to choose, but I'm just saying you should look for these. Look out, first of all, for toxic design. If things are non-toxic, they're easier to handle. You don't want to deal with hazmat. Hazardous material is a nightmare for everybody. It's a burden on our society. You want less toxic design. Number 2, single-use anything I don't care about your convenience is bad. Stuff that's made to be garbage. Think about that. Oh, you're too busy to wash a fork? We make all these forks just to be garbage. I used to work at a movie theater, and this huge delivery truck, beep, 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 once a week would come in, and me and all the theater grunts would have to walk outside and take boxes and boxes and boxes, just like a whole truck. It was a big theater. A whole truck of like empty cups and lids and boxes of straws. And all that is single use. They might as well just drive the truck to the landfill and we just take their money. That'd be great. That was my job at the theater, was to take money from people so I could help them make trash. That single-use economy, that's just ugly. That's just... I know it makes sense. I know, what am I supposed to do, bring a cup? Maybe.
There's a lot of businesses that now they like give you a discount for your own cup, or
Yeah.
you have to, like, I know places you have to buy a glass bottle and bring it back.
And socially, we could just decide, be like, how about everybody can just bring their own soda and stuff to the movie theater.
I think the movie theater make most of their profits on.
I know, give them a cut, whatever. Screw them, they make plenty of money on us elsewhere. I don't know. Like, we just allow this. I'm just saying that we've built this society. This was us. We can decide to make changes. I don't know. Disposable stuff is just so sad, like things that are just made to go to garbage. And remember, trash should not be the buyer's problem. I'll sell you that cell phone, but then you can't throw it away. It's your problem now. Making stuff the buyer's problem is not a good idea because most buyers, they don't really care. It's like giving everybody loaded guns and I'm telling them, like, you got to be really careful with it, but here it is. And most people are like, you know how that goes? Like, most people don't care. I mean, I'll admit it, I've thrown batteries in the trash. Sure, you have. You don't have to feel bad about it. We all do that sort of stuff. So making it the buyer's responsibility like this, I don't know. It doesn't usually work. Okay. Anybody want to ask me about number 21? Yeah.
Bringing it back to like the plastic versus paper bag thing.
Yeah, plastic versus paper bag.
It wasn't the thing against the reusable bags that like it takes more carbon to produce a reusable bag.
Yeah, there may be times when single use is the more reasonable choice, unfortunately. You know, by the way, I think that there might be a good way to split the difference. Like, we already make a bunch of packaging that the supermarket throws out. Like when I go to Trader Joe's, I just go like, can I have some of your boxes that you haven't broken down yet? So like that's destined to be garbage, and I take it and make it for my carry home. Like there's probably ways that you could improve, but yeah, you're right. Like making a reusable bag that has a gigantic global footprint, it's probably not realistic when those reusable bags aren't going to be reused that much. All right. Quickly, I'm going to move very fast. Number 23. What are the 5 most common ingredients in the U.S. waste stream? Paper's number 1. Number 2 is yard trimmings. Number 3 is. Number 4 is. Number 5 is. Just so you know, all top 5 are either biodegradable or recyclable. Look at those 5. Look at those 5. Paper, compostable or recyclable. Yard trimmings, mulchable, compostable. Food scraps, mulchable or compostable. Plastics, mostly recyclable. Metals, mostly recyclable. The gross majority of our trash doesn't have to be trash. Out of the total U.S. waste stream, 60% is biodegradable. Some cities, they just don't put it in the trash. In Santa Barbara, we divert 70% of our trash. That's not bad. San Francisco's over 90%. Yeah. It's a mix. Yeah, I mean, San Francisco has a better compost system than we do. Santa Barbara still has a lot of composting. We could go from 70 to 80 something, maybe start flirting with 90 if we ramped up our composting. Like the stuff that still gets into our trash, the remaining 30% that we can't divert. In Santa Barbara, most of that is probably compostable. I'm going to guess more than half that's compostable.
I think that they could make something where when we get all the trash together, we split it somehow so like the compost and stuff goes into the compost.
If you want to pay for it, but nobody wants to pay for it. So unless we made them, no. You'd have to force people to spend more money. Nobody wants to do it themselves, right? It's love. And so no, it's lies. It's like sneaky. So everybody's like, can't we just hire somebody, probably from Mexico, to do this? Like, oh, you mean you're volunteering to do it? Like, I think that's what it usually comes down to, yeah. And then that just raises costs. You got to pay more people, and so when you're paying people, then so that's why it doesn't usually happen. Number 24, we've talked about compost incineration, open dumping, landfill, so I'm going to move on. Number 25,
On On 24,
Yeah.
what is mixing trash during disposal costs you that?
Mixing trash is bad because then you can't pull out all these different arrows. You know what I'm saying? If you like put your compost inside of e-waste and then cover it in aluminum foil ball, that's going to be like a mix of recyclable, compostable, and hazardous material that's really difficult to untangle. That's why it's bad to mix them up. The more that consumers split these arrows, the better the system works. Meaning,
Separate it.
if you, the consumer, have a whole bunch of trash cans at home, then all the compost stays with the compost and the recyclable stays recyclable and the e-waste stays separate. That would probably be ideal. Yeah?
But if you said that you don't want it to be the consumer's responsibility because most people don't care, then how do you incentivize people to separate their trash?
So I think that's something that really does work very well is to monetize things. This is a place where I do believe in the market. You know, like when we started taking people's nickels for all of the beverage packages, beverage packaging left the landfill. If you're too good to give a crap about the nickel, unfortunately our society has people who do give a crap about the nickel. And my suggestion would be, let's make it $1. So, if you make a deposit when someone has control of it, then give them back their deposit when they return it. That would be my suggestion. And that's the way it works, like in many parts of the world, with all these recyclable beverage containers. You got your deposit cost to get the container, and then you got your beer cost inside the bottle. But when you bring back the bottle, you get the next one for just the price of the beer. You know what I'm saying? Like, you ever been to places in the world where you got to return the bottles? Yeah.
You're talking about CRV, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about the CRV, California Redemption Value. Yeah.
Well, that kind of brings up a whole other thing that people buying a lot of beers and sodas and stuff.
Why are you pointing at me? You got something to say? Just say it. Just say it. You've been working with my wife, haven't you? I'm out of here!
Just to give them unlimited free beer and soda and everything. Because if they just buy it all and then return the bottles.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying make them more expensive, add a price for the container.
Yeah, like with the CRV, like our soda costs a nickel more, and then if we give them back, we get a nickel back.
He's saying make sodas $2, you bring the soda back, and get that $1 for the bottle.
And by the way, let the market figure out the right price. I'm not an expert. But the CRV did help. And we could do the same thing with batteries. Be like, yo, batteries are really cheap, but, you know, the disposal cleanup, we pay for that. As a society, we're all paying. Like, it's not like it's otherwise free, it's otherwise everybody's problem. I think we should internalize cost to the activity so you know what the actual price is. Make sense? Okay, number 25 then, landfills. They're called sanitary because it's better than putting it in a pile. Anybody ever seen open dumps? In Argentina, Brazil, Italy, and Mexico, I have seen open dumps. By the way, in the United States, I've also seen open dumps. The problem with an open dump is the animals get stuff, the wind and the rain move it around, and it's like a big pile of coffee with water coming over the top. Nasty pollution percolates out of the bottom. It's called leachate. So now, the United States has laws about how to make a landfill. Landfills have 4 requirements. Please look up. 1, 2, 3, 4. And before we do any of that, we got to put them in the right place. Nowadays, you can't put a landfill on top of a river. You can't put a landfill in a wetland. We used to do that. So once we've carefully sited, please look up, here they come. You need an impermeable layer, like a tub to catch all the leachate. You need, number 2, compacted layers of soil, like a lid, to keep out the seagulls and block the wind. Then you need to keep track of the leachate. So number 3, you collect all the stuff on top of the layer, and number 4, you make sure it's not getting below that layer. Yeah.
Where's our landfill in Santa Barbara?
Tahigas.
Where?
Tahigas or Tahigas Reef, just north of Refugio. You go like a turn and a half past Refugio State Beach. It's on the right-hand side. Yeah.
Wait, what are those? Those, like, rocks and things on top of it?
So those are wells. You can suck out leachate from the bottom of the landfill so that you can treat it. And then separately, you make sure that no leachate is percolating underneath your landfill.
And what was the definition of leachate?
Leachate is the water that seeps out of a landfill. It's like nasty butt juice that is like soaked through the landfill. That's a technical term. Yeah.
At our landfill, how much like space is it for all of Santa Barbara's trash?
A, I've never measured it. B, it's pretty compact when you see it. C, they're kind of running out of space. I'd say the entire facility is probably maybe 4 Santa Barbara High School campuses, but the actual landfill pile is not much bigger than that grass area down there. Like, you can walk around the entire landfill in probably under an hour. Anybody want to ask me anything else? So all we got left for tomorrow is 27, 28, and the reader questions.
I don't know what to say. If you don't mind, we'll have to